Good day. Welcome to today's devotional. um, for those that may be just checking this video for the first time, I do these devotionals on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So those 4 days every week, I try to aim at 12:30 Atlantic Standard Time, and so that's always the plan. So here we are today. I hope you had a good weekend. We're going to just get going here in a moment for the devotional. I just want to give a chance for people to connect who try to do this live. We're working our way through Proverbs. So Proverbs chapter 3 today, and the verse we're going to look at today is one of the verses in Proverbs that's well known outside of, even though it's somewhat outside of the Christian community. People have heard this verse because it's a beloved verse. A lot of people have used this, memorized these verses, and used them as a source in their life of comfort and remind them to come to the Lord. And so we're gonna be dealing with that one today. We've been working with these verses one verse at a time, but in chapter 3 of Proverbs, we get this kind of a method, this kind of a communication method is used of presenting, if you do this, then this, kind of a causality thing here, right? You do this, it will cause, or the result will be this. Sort of also kind of an investment idea. Invest this way, this will be your return, if you want to think of it like that. And that's over 2 verses. So in this particular part of Proverbs, the message is given over 2 verses. So I'm reading the verses together, but we're going to still focus on one verse at a time. That's the way I want to go through this devotional set. So we will be doing that. So we're going to look at verse 5 primarily, but let's read verse 5 and 6. It says this: "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight." So as I said, this is a beloved verse. A lot of people have memorized this in their life and tried to remind themselves to trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. And so then the second verse, which we'll look at tomorrow. But for today, let's focus on that first part, which is trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. What does that mean? What that's talking about is the idea of faith. A lot of people in our world today who are not religious, they very, very frequently make a big mistake about what faith is. They think faith is this kind of unreasonable, blind thing that we just choose to believe certain facts as true, whether they are or not. And that's simply not what faith is. Biblically speaking, faith is more about trust than it is about a particular statement of truth, although it does include that as well. But it's about trust. It's more than just that, and it's not unreasonable. It's not saying trust something you have no reason to trust. That's not what faith is about. Faith is about you have good reason to trust, so trust, and that's what faith is. And this verse is one of those verses about faith where it's telling us, trust in the Lord, trust in God with all your heart. Don't lean on your own understanding. So you might say, oh, that's kind of like, that's the blind faith idea, isn't it? And it's like, well, no, it's not really. I mean, the whole book of Proverbs talks about how God comes through for us and God's greater. But there is an idea here that, don't just trust God because you think you got it all figured out. Trust God because he's actually greater than you. And the real question is in this verse it's not a statement about trusting God without reason. That's not the statement. The statement is more this, because remember, in Hebrew poetry, which Proverbs is, a lot of the time the idea is restated in these couplets, and it's like, I'm going to state an idea and I'm going to state it again, right? So trust the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. It's kind of like it's saying this to you: who do you trust more, God or you? Which is the one that you're leaning on and trusting on, God or you? Which do you trust more? I think that's a very important idea for us to consider. Which is more what you put your faith and your trust in your life? All right, well, let's examine our 4 questions today. Well, first question is, what is your heart? What do we mean by heart? Once again, biblically speaking, when you read about the heart in the Bible, if you tend to think in modern terms, you might be tempted to reduce it to an emotional thing and say your heart is just talking about your feelings. Trust in God with all your feelings. Don't lean on your own understanding. Well, how does that go together? Well, The thing is, that's not actually what the Bible means when it uses heart. The idea of the heart is your inner self, the you inside, not just the you that does the thinking. That's obviously you. We have our conscious mind and we think about things, and that's you for sure. But there's also something underneath your conscious mind, something that's deeper than even your thoughts, right? That drives you along in life. That kind of rules over your instincts. That inner person inside you, even deeper than your conscious thinking, your own understanding, and that's your heart. That's your inner self. It's where your instincts kind of come from, not just your biological instincts. I'm not talking about that low. There's biological instincts as well, but above that, and somewhere inside of you, the thing that causes you to desire things, the thing that causes you to have hope, even when you can't quite put it into words, or the sense of who you are, even though you can't quite put it into words because your conscious mind isn't able to fully express it. But inside yourself, deeper inside there is your heart. And that part of you is not just emotional, but it does include your emotions. That part of you. And this verse, as well, whenever you read about the heart in the Bible, it's kind of leading you to that place. And this verse does too. Trust God with more than you're thinking. Like, trust God even deeper than that. Like right into the core of you. Trust in the Lord. Trust Him. Like, believe that He's going to be. Well, we'll explore that He's going to be God, and it's going to be a good thing that He's God. And that's the idea. So that's what the heart is. So when the Bible encourages you to become that kind of person, it'll result in the outcome of God directing your paths. But that's the thing. So then the question too is, well, what is trust? So that's what the heart is. What does it mean to trust God with all your heart? And I think the answer to that is kind of evident in the second part of the couplet. Do not lean on your own. It's another way of saying the same thing, right? Do not lean on your own understanding. Do not trust your own understanding. But if you lean on God with all of your heart, right? So you can kind of interchange those two words. That's the point. And the idea here is that idea of who do you trust more? With the inner self, with who you are inside, who do you tend to lean on more? Your ability to figure things out, or God's, right? Do you trust, do you lean on with your life? Do you put the weight of your life on your own understanding, your own abilities to figure out life? Or do you put the leaning of your life, is it resting on God? And that's the thing. When you think about leaning on something, right? I mean, you wouldn't lean, or if you think about sitting in a chair, right? I'm in this chair, I wouldn't sit in the chair if I didn't think it was going to hold me, right? So I trust it. I'd lean on it. I put my weight on it, and I go through that. Or I lean on somebody. If you think about yourself being on a journey or trying to carry something, and somebody else to lift the other end of the, you're trying to move a Chesterfield, and you want someone to help you, and they're on the other end lifting up that Chesterfield. And as you go, you're letting the weight of that be in your hands, but you're actually kind of depending on that other person to carry that weight, and you're trusting them with that weight. And when you get to an awkward spot, and you might say, hey, hang on a second, they're now going to bear the weight, and you can trust them to do so. You're trying to, right? It's kind of like that. It's like with your life, when we say we just want to believe that God exists, or want to believe that He's holy, or these ideas about God's nature, it's all good. But Christian faith is about going even deeper to this idea of, not only do I believe that God exists, but I trust Him with my life. I lean on Him. And I don't just do that with my understanding, although I do it with my understanding. But because of my understanding, I actually go deeper, and I do it with my very being, my center, beyond even what my mind can think. I trust Him. And that's what this is about. That's what this verse is saying. Do that. Like, we should learn to do that. So question 3, why would anyone not trust God? It's an interesting question. It's not an easy one. Why wouldn't somebody trust God? And if you in your life, you struggle with trusting God, ask yourself, why? Think about it. Like, is it that you think that, maybe maybe he's not good. Maybe he's really bad. And so I can't trust him because maybe he's deceptive or underhanded, or maybe he's mean, or he's going to hurt me in some way because he's nasty. And if you think those things about God, you're not going to trust him naturally. And I think for some people, that's what it is. They actually just don't trust that he's actually good. And so they don't realize his character is described throughout Scripture as being driven by love. He's also just, he's holy, he's all those things too, but driven by love. God is love. And so his caring for you. I mean, in the New Testament, the Saint Peter tells us, cast all your cares on God. Why? Because he cares about you. He takes care of you. He watches over you. It's like that's what God is. And in the Old Testament, so many places it talks about God's loving kindness that endures or is unchanging. One of the Psalms, which is another book of the Bible, poems, talks about, it just repeats the refrain over and over and over again. His loving kindness endures forever. His loving kindness endures forever, over and over again, because he is good. But sometimes we don't trust him because we don't think he is. Or sometimes we don't trust God because we don't think he's smart enough. Isn't that funny to say? He's God, right? He's the definition of good, and he's the definition of smart. I mean, there is no one smarter than God, but it's amazing how often humans will think that God hasn't thought of everything, or did he figure it out? I'm not sure he does God get that? Do you understand, God, that I'm at the end of my rope? Like, you say things like that. Of course he understands that. How would he not understand that? He's God. He knows everything. He understands everything. There is nothing that is beyond his ability to understand. And sometimes we don't trust him because I think sometimes we just not sure he's getting it the way we do. And really, like, when you really think about it, you go, well, give your head a shake. No, he's God. He knows everything. But sometimes I think that happens to us. We think we know best. Or other times we don't trust God because we just think he's not capable. Once again, it's not logical. It doesn't make sense, right? Why would you think God is incapable? But we sometimes do, well, God can't do that. We think that there's something beyond his ability. Something's impossible for God to do. He's God. He created all of the things that have possibility. He created the entire universe. So, I mean, yeah, anything's possible for God. He can do anything he wants. He's God. And yet sometimes we do, at least in our subconscious or beyond the thinking, the understanding, in the deeper part of ourselves. Sometimes these are the things we think, right? In the deeper unconscious part of our minds, we think God isn't good, or he's not smart as we are, or he's not as capable as we are, or whatever. And so we can't trust him. We can't lean on him. And in a place that's beyond our understanding, we have these kinds of doubts. Sometimes we have them right in our understanding, and you really need to give your head a shake if you think God isn't capable or smart or good. Like, you come on. But it's not usually up here that problem exists. It's actually down here. And we think those things. And maybe even deeper than all those things, we don't trust God because we're afraid he won't do what we want him to do. Maybe we think he is good and smart and capable, but we're just not so sure he's going to do what I want him to do, that he'll choose a course for my life that's not the course I want to take. And so we don't trust him to do what we want him to do. And that's a mistake. That's pretty much what we've been talking about for the first two chapters of Proverbs, right? We shouldn't get distracted by these other things, these desires and deceptions. We should realize the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. Knowing God is better. And if I want my path to be straight, then I got to realize that sometimes I'm going to want to veer off that path. And God's going to say, nope, you should be on the straight path. And he's going to pull me back against my will, and I'm going to have to bend my will and say, I trust you, God. Bring me back to the straight path, because that is better, and I know it is. So, yes. So actually, with my brain, I tell my heart to smarten up and trust the Lord, and I teach my heart to trust him, right? Which is question 4, and this is the important part of the whole thing today. How do you teach your heart to trust God? And the answer is in the question. You teach your heart to trust God, right? That's what you do. It's all a process. You don't come by it naturally. You don't come by it easily. It's a process of teaching your heart, which means correcting yourself, telling yourself, wait now, do I really think God is not good? Or wait now, Tim, do you really think God isn't capable? Or wait now, Tim, do you really think that God is going to lead you onto a crooked path? Or is it more likely I'm going on a crooked path and I need to bend my will? And that correcting of yourself, consciously correcting yourself so that your heart eventually gets it, and disciplining yourself to trust the Lord so that your heart eventually gets it. And it does. It moves over time of practicing and teaching yourself. It moves from here to here. And that's the goal. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will set your path straight. Well, that's it for today. God bless each person. Help us to do this. Help us to teach ourselves, Lord, to trust you more than us. God bless you. Lord willing, tomorrow around 12:30, we'll do verse 6 together. Have a good rest of your day.